Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. On Tuesday morning, ahead of the emergency debate on wildfires in the House of Commons, the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs held a press conference in Winnipeg. Chiefs of First Nations in northern Manitoba joined virtually to urge the province and Canada to send emergency equipment to their communities. APTN Sierra Bettens has more.
Could this have been prevented? My general feeling is that most of it could have been prevented if our nations were equipped with the proper equipment.
For 13 days, Manitoba Kuwait-Noe Ogunmaganik Inc. Grand Chief Garrison Satie and First Nations leadership across the province have brought thousands of wildfire evacuees to a place of safety. But impacted communities have told Satie there's not enough emergency and fire prevention equipment on the ground.
They want to save their infrastructure. They want to protect their communities, but they don't have the equipment.
Gordy Bear is a chief of Matthias Cologne Cree Nation, or Papatawagan, where all members, except some 50 essential workers, have been evacuated.
Nobody's given us any kind of equipment. Like I said, we have a pile of garden hoses here and cots. We don't need those cots. We have beds at home. If you give us equipment, we'll protect ourselves and we'll stop the fire.
Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs Grand Chief Kyra Wilson says communities have been begging the province and Canada for equipment that has never arrived.
We know that some communities don't have the fire trucks. There's no evacuation transport, no water supply systems, limited communication tools. As Chief Bear said, they're using hoses that are as big as a garden hose. How do you fight wildfires with a garden hose?
Pimachikamak Cree Nation Chief David Monias joined virtually from his community where nearly everyone has been evacuated. He says First Nations-run emergency services are needed.
We can do a better job, and we have done a better job than anybody else. You know, in Gross Lake, we have a community council, mayor and council. We don't play around with jurisdiction or the boundaries and so forth. Right away, we join forces.
All leaders urge the province, Canada, and the Red Cross to end the jurisdictional disputes and promptly deliver emergency equipment to northern communities.
We're standing by fighting over jurisdictional issues. This is a shame how this wildfire has been coordinated from day one. This should not have happened to our people. And I am asking Canada to wake up and help our people.
Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
In an update late this afternoon, the province of Manitoba says the Canadian Red Cross has now registered more than 14,300 people from over 5,400 households evacuated due to the wildfires in the province. This includes people from approximately 2,400 households on behalf of Indigenous Services Canada and 3,000 households on behalf of the province of Manitoba. Well, as the wildfires continue to rage in Manitoba and Saskatchewan now for a second straight week, the Minister of Emergency Management, Eleanor Olszewski, held a press conference in Ottawa on Tuesday. Evacuations due to the wildfires have meant some First Nations people have been transported from Manitoba as far away as Ontario because of a lack of nearby places to go. The Canadian military has also been helping with the evacuations. Olszewski says the government will match dollar-for-dollar donations to the Red Cross for fire assistance in Manitoba and Saskatchewan. Beyond this, she was unable to say what immediate supports the government will offer.
There will be additional relief that will be provided to individuals, families, and communities with respect to not only assisting them with the effects of the wildfires, but also with respect to making sure that communities are more resilient in the future. So there's a number of different kinds of funding mechanisms that can be employed.
And it's not just Manitoba and Saskatchewan, as dozens of wildfires continue to burn out of control from Ontario to British Columbia. 103 fires are currently deemed out of control in Canada, with most burning in the western part of the country. British Columbia has 74 active fires, Alberta 57, and Manitoba is currently experiencing 27 fires. To other news now, and yesterday Prime Minister Mark Carney met with the provincial and territorial premiers in Saskatoon to discuss strengthening Canada's economy. As APTN's Rachel May reports, there was consensus on working together for national economic unity, but not much detail on how they would do that.
We discussed a wide range of potential nation-building projects, including, and this is far from exhaustive, the Western and Arctic Corridor, which, amongst other things, connects energy, critical minerals, and trade infrastructure, the Eastern Energy Partnership, critical minerals pathways, which include a range of critical mineral projects that premiers can speak to, the next stage of nuclear, from uranium to SMRs to large-scale nuclear, and a series of infrastructure investments for export diversification from ports to rails to last-mile roads.
The premiers began arriving at TCU Place in Saskatoon yesterday with their priorities in their pockets. To be considered of national interest, projects had to strengthen Canada's autonomy, provide clear economic benefits, have high success potential, and support clean technology. When it was all over, neither the Prime Minister nor the premiers would say which projects would be moving forward. Prime Minister Carney said that was simply because there just wasn't enough time to discuss each project without overshadowing others.
There is a long list of projects that bring the country together, diversify our markets, make us more resilient, create good jobs and growth, have very good prospects of Indigenous partnerships and beyond.
Premier Danielle Smith says she looks forward to partnering with the federal government and the other premiers to help Alberta's oil and other natural resources support Canada's goal of being the strongest economy in the G7.
Have to address issues, of course, of Indigenous ownership and equity partnership. You have to address issues, of course, of emissions and other environmental issues. But that's what I heard, is how do we have an all of the above approach? And I think that's very encouraging.
The press conference ended with Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew addressing the ongoing wildfire crisis affecting the prairie provinces.
I want to say thank you. And it's in these moments of emergency and in these moments of crisis where you see the true nature of Canadians shine through. And I think that we need to be proud of that and to take a moment to thank folks for stepping up in the way that they have through our state of emergency.
The leaders of Canada's Indigenous groups were not at the meeting, but the consensus among the premiers and Carney was that whatever nation-building projects went ahead, they must do so with Indigenous input. Rachel May, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
To BC now, where the search for a 24-year-old man who went missing in 2023 from Merritt has come to a tragic end. Miguel Mack was last seen in the early morning hours at this 7-Eleven store in downtown Merritt, BC. APTN National News joined the family in 2023 while they searched waterways, abandoned buildings, and fields. Throughout the investigation, RCMP concluded that there was foul play involved and called his case a homicide. His family posted on social media this week that his remains were located. However, no other details were provided. We'll have more information on this story in the coming days. First Nations continue to push back over bills in a number of provinces. More on that coming up after the break. Welcome back. Several levels of government are ramping up efforts to fast-track energy pipelines and critical minerals projects. The recent throne speech says Ottawa wants the evaluation time for resource extraction projects reduced from 5 years to 2 years. The province of Ontario is also pushing ahead with Bill 5. which aims to create special economic zones where environmental assessment standards can be bypassed. It's to speed up projects like mining in Northern Ontario's Ring of Fire. This has upset First Nations across Canada. They say any project proposal must be done with free, prior, and informed consent. This morning, outside of Cabinet, Minister of Justice Sean Fraser was asked if this equals a veto.
In most circumstances, I think it demands a very deep level of engagement and understanding of the rights that may be impacted, and to the extent that those rights can be accommodated, we should make every effort to. The explicit nature of a veto, so far my understanding is it stops short of a complete veto, but it certainly, in my view, heightens the demands upon government to engage fully to both understand the nature of the rights that could be impacted by decisions taken by government, but also the heightened duty to accommodate those rights that are baked into our treaties and protected by our Constitution.
The Assembly of First Nations Quebec and Labrador Chief Francis Variol Paul went to Quebec's National Assembly to provide testimony to a parliamentary committee. It's Quebec legislation intended to modernize the forest industry, but some contesting it say it violates UNDRIP. Variol Paul was joined by chiefs from Lac-Simon, Pessamit, and Pequamanooj. He said before the committee, forest management must be carried out alongside First Nations in order to ensure a sustainable future for all. Variol Paul says a committee of First Nations leaders has been set up to meet with the Minister of Natural Resources and Forests, Mété Blanchette Vizina. Protests have erupted in response to the bill, which have included blockades and sending eviction notices to logging companies. After the committee, Minister Blanchette Vizina told reporters the government won't tolerate blocking roads, but the minister is willing to work with the AFN-QL on amending the bill.
Je pense que c'est important de travailler ensemble. Et c'est la volonté qu'ils ont. Ils souhaitent coécrire un projet de loi. Bien, en fait, pour moi, l'endroit, il existe. Et je retends la main pour eux, c'est-à-dire, venez vous asseoir, on va pouvoir travailler ensemble sur des bonifications du projet de loi. Ma porte est toujours ouverte.
Meanwhile, the NDP government in BC has passed Bill 15, the Infrastructure Projects Act, which is aimed at fast-tracking infrastructure projects like building more hospitals, schools, and potentially more oil and gas projects. However, the First Nations Leadership Council and Union of BC Indian Chiefs says they were not consulted on this bill and say that this goes against the United Nations Declaration of Indigenous Rights, which BC adopted into law in 2019. Grand Chief Stuart Phillips says the latest move by the BC government could destabilize the relationship between the BC government and First Nations in the province.
What we heard, obviously, is from the political side of the issue. And clearly, the First Nations have said that we're not going to allow our rights to be swept aside, our land rights, our water and human rights swept aside or trampled on. That's simply not going to happen. Furthermore, we're stating to the government that DRIPA is the law and it cannot be swept aside. We will not tolerate that.
Still to come tonight, we'll speak with a reporter behind a new podcast looking at a pipeline company's attempts to rewrite the story on the Standing Rock movement. Stick around. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. And James Moore wanted to share just one of many walleye he claims he caught and released at MacArthur Falls in Manitoba. Just kidding, James. Thanks for always sharing. For the chance to be our next photo of the day, you can send your pictures to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, 27 in Fredericton and Halifax. 14 with rain in Kuujjuaq, rain in Nain and a high of 11. 32 under sunny skies in Montreal, showers and 22 in Val-d'Or. 21 with rain in Sault Ste. Marie, 28 in Ottawa. Rain and 25 in Thunder Bay, showers and 20 in Sioux Lookout. Smoke in God's Lake with a high of 12, smoky and 11 for Norway House. 22 with showers in Winnipeg, 20 and rain in Dauphin. 20 in Regina, 21 with showers in Saskatoon. 20 in Meadow Lake with rain, smoky and 18 in La Ronge. In northern Alberta, smoky and 22 in High Level, smoke and 19 in Fort McMurray. Sunny and 21 in Edmonton, 20 in Lethbridge. 18 in Vancouver, 25 in Kamloops. 21 for Prince George and Smithers. 12 in Old Crow, rain and 15 in Whitehorse. 17 in Yellowknife, 24 in Fort Simpson. -1 with snow in Sax Harbor, 3 above in Pawlatuck. 3 in Chesterfield, cloudy and 9 in Baker Lake. 2 in Resolute, 8 in Joe Haven. A new season of the popular climate podcast Drilled is digging into the $700 million lawsuit brought forward by the company that built the Dakota Access Pipeline that could shut down Greenpeace. Drilled Season 12 Slapped looks at the efforts of pipeline company Energy Transfer to rewrite the story of the historic 2016 Standing Rock movement. The podcast is reported by Aileen Brown, who has done extensive investigative reporting on the events in Standing Rock. We spoke with her earlier. Aileen, great to speak with you. It's been a while since we last spoke, but certainly a lot of interest in this podcast that you've worked on with Tristan Atone and others. Can you remind our viewers first about the lawsuit Energy Transfer brought against Greenpeace and others?
Yeah, sure. So the first version of this lawsuit was actually filed in 2017 as the Standing Rock movement in North Dakota was sort of winding down, or it had just wound down. The pipeline company Energy Transfer sued Greenpeace as well as a number of other individuals and organizations under the RICO Act, which is actually a law that was created to go after the mafia. The lawsuit also included a number of defamation claims. And between then and now, it's sort of shifted. The defendants ended up just being a few different Greenpeace organizations, apparently conspiring with each other. And the RICO suit, which was at a federal level, was dismissed, and the case was refiled in the state of North Dakota as a conspiracy suit.
Well, as somebody who spent quite a bit of time down there, I don't really remember hearing about Greenpeace all that often, but there were some pretty big allegations here by the pipeline company about the role Greenpeace played in the protests in Standing Rock. What were some of those? And, you know, as somebody who's reported on this yourself quite extensively, how real are those allegations?
Yeah, so, you know, I had the same reaction when I first heard about this lawsuit. I'd done so much coverage of Standing Rock, talked to so many people who were there, spent time there myself, and I had just never heard much about Greenpeace at all. But this lawsuit was basically claiming that Greenpeace was driving the Standing Rock movement, not the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, not grassroots Indigenous people, but this kind of outside big historically white-led nonprofit. So, you know, Energy Transfer wanted Greenpeace to pay for virtually all of their protest-related damages. I think the other really big issue with this suit is the defamation claims. So Energy Transfer was claiming that Greenpeace defamed the company by saying that Energy Transfer deliberately desecrated sacred sites. And it defamed the company by saying that the pipeline passed through tribal land. It was also allegedly defamation to say that police and private security used violence against nonviolent protesters. issues. Those first two claims in particular are ones that the Standing Rock Sioux tribe still stands very clearly behind. And the third is, again, you and I both covered that movement, and we saw many people were watching the live feeds of police violence. So it really was sort of, and seemed to be an attempt to rewrite the story of Standing Rock.
Yeah, as somebody who got shot at with rubber bullets, I don't recall blaming Greenpeace for that. But, you attended the trial as well for this podcast. What are some of the things that stuck out for you?
Yeah, so, I think the makeup of the jury was one of the most remarkable things. I found that 7 of the 11 jurors and alternates that were kind of there to decide the case had economic ties to the fossil fuel industry. I think a couple, if I remember correctly, had family members who were a part of law enforcement and responded to the protests. And a lot of people expressed, negative feelings about the Standing Rock movement. This is a pretty relatively rural place, the county where it was tried, and thousands of people showed up that people didn't know. So people really that community felt that their lives were disrupted, and they really didn't like the protests. So those were the ones that were going to decide what happened. I think I was also just struck, I think the whole time I was sitting in that trial, I was waiting for a smoking gun, and I didn't really hear one. Greenpeace certainly played a role on the ground at Standing Rock. They gave some money and I think personnel support to a group that was providing nonviolent direct action training on the ground, so kind of like protest training in a way, but it was a small number of people from Greenpeace that showed up. It was a relatively small amount of money, and again, Energy Transfer is saying that this organization is responsible for their PR costs, their security costs. They bought a ranch that the pipeline where their drill pad was located. They wanted Greenpeace to pay for that. And some of these expenses were incurred before Greenpeace arrived, as well as years after they left. So it was pretty remarkable.
Aileen, so much we could talk about. Of course, Greenpeace lost the suit, ordered to pay hundreds of millions of dollars. The podcast is going to get into what the verdict means for Indigenous rights and climate activists and free speech. Part 1 is out now. Aileen, thanks so much for talking to us about it. Can't wait to hear it all.
Thank you.
And that is all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Tuesday. We will be back here tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time with your first look at the day's news. As always, for news anytime, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy McGuitch, thanks for being with us. Have a great night.